Absolutely. All right. Thanks everyone for joining us this afternoon. We are here with our host, Lauren Swain. She is the project coordinator for PSR Colorado, and she will be giving us an overview of hydrogen blending and clean air heat plan, which we're going to be discussing. And then we are joined here by our guests. We have Justin Brant, who is a utility program director who works with Southwest Energy Efficiency Project, also known as SWEEP, on the new Xcel clean heat rebates and how to access them. That's what he will be talking about when we get into his portion of the presentation. And then we'll be doing a little Q&A with him on that. And then we're also joined with Vince Calvano, who is an attorney who's worked with different nonprofits, including PSR and CRES, which is the Colorado Renewable Energy Society. And he works on public utilities matters. He'll be talking about how and why utility proceedings advance our climate advocacy. And then I myself, my name is Claire Carmelia. I am a board member of PSR Colorado who works on these important climate action matters. I'm also a counselor in Westminster, Colorado, if you're familiar with that. Also
Hear
a
me?
candidate. Oh,
Hear
we've
me?
got questions.
The screen just came up and it said, could you unmute?
Sorry, Lynn. That was a mistake. Thank you.
And we're already getting into it. All right. So if everyone could please put yourselves on mute, we will be collecting questions as we go. Lauren, how is that going to look? It sounds like we have closed the chat. So we'll be taking questions at the end. Is that correct?
We're going to be asking everybody to put their questions in Q&A. That is the most convenient way to work, but we'll have a brief pause after Justin's presentation and after Vince's for additional questions. And then once they wrap up, I will be going into greater detail about the resources that we have available on our website, new resources, and open to more Q&A and discussion starting around 5. So,
Okay, so if folks can put their questions into Q&A, then I can monitor them and hand them to Lauren as we go on through the presentation. And with that, I will hand it over to you, Lauren. Thanks so much.
okay, thank you very much, Claire. I'm Lauren Swain. I'm the coordinator for PSR Colorado, Physicians for Social Responsibility. And for the past 4 years, I've been performing multiple functions for our organization, but one of the major ones has been the Healthy Electric Homes program. And that's been outreach to the public and engagement with various decision makers in our state to basically decarbonize and what I say, promote emission-free living, emission-free appliances, emission-free heating. And we call this a lot of things: building decarbonization, building electrification. But really foundationally, I think thinking about this as a way to have emission-free homes and an emission-free building sector is really the most inviting and enriching way to look at this issue. So let me share with you a little bit about hydrogen blending and the clean heat plan and the considerations that were involved originally when we were confronted with the prospect of utilities introducing hydrogen gas into our homes through our residential methane gas supply, and the prospect, the shiny and beautiful prospect of having a real clean heat plan for Colorado that doesn't include false solutions like alternative forms of methane and hydrogen that continue the combustion cycle of combustion fuels in our homes instead of the emission-free homes that we need and deserve that help our climate and our health prosper. So with that, let me share some quick slides, and then I'm going to share with you our new web resources, our new web resource bank. So here we go. Let me just share PowerPoint and go to the slideshow and play from the start. Okay. So yes, thank you for all for being here to learn how Colorado won a real clean heat plan without false solutions. And I'm very, very excited to have Justin Brant of SWEEP and Vince Calvano presenting their perspectives on these issues after a brief introduction here. Thank you. So Again, the idea that we could go emission-free, that means no burning of anything in our home, no leaking of anything in our home. We're talking about introducing heat pumps and other appliances that do not bring gases into our home, do not require pipelines going to our homes to improve the safety and the health of the residents, as well as reducing emissions that also compromise our climate. With PSR Colorado, there's a number of resources available that we did tap to make our case against false solutions and for facilitating access to heat pumps in Colorado through, excuse me just a second, I get out of this. Okay. Facilitating heat pumps in to access to heat pumps. Sorry, Mari. Yeah, I'm hearing you. Okay. Excuse me. So through rebates and other incentives. And why does Xcel's Clean Heat Plan matter to you? Because we're talking about health, we're talking about safety, we're talking about energy costs, the comfort of living in your home with an opportunity for affordable cooling, security of your fuel sources, justice for everybody to have access to safety and comfort in their home at an affordable price, and our climate future on which all of the other factors depend. The whole reason that we have the opportunity to get a clean heat plan in Colorado is because of SB 21-264, which was passed in 2021, and it charged the Public Utilities Commission with approving gas utility plans that serve the public interest. And it described the public interest, and one of the features of public interest was health and safety, and we honed in on that as PSR when we submitted our clean heat plan testimony in the Xcel proceeding. This legislation required Xcel, Black Hills, Atmos, and Colorado Natural Gas Utilities to submit plans to the PUC that reduce greenhouse gas emissions by 4% by 2025. Hey, that's now. Maybe by the end of the year, we'll get there. And 22% by 2030 when compared to 2015 levels. And it allowed utilities to raise rates by 2.5% to cover their costs, and with some price flexibility to meet emission reduction goals if necessary. So who intervened in the clean heat proceeding? Climate and environmental advocacy groups, and that includes PSR, our co-intervening group, Colorado Renewable Energy Society, state agencies, including the Colorado Energy Office and the Utility Consumer Advocate. The Utility Consumer Advocate, I just want to say right now, did a lot of great work to argue against false solutions, which are also costly solutions to consumers in the Clean Heat Plan. And I'm very grateful for all their questions and challenges of hydrogen blending plans by Xcel. So I just want to give them a plug here. City and county governments, fossil fuel industry groups, yes, there's always the opposition, and other stakeholders intervened, and that means that their testimony has to be heard as part of the proceeding. They go through a formal process where their testimony actually has to be heard by the Public Utilities Commission and responded to. So how did the health and climate advocates influence Xcel and the PUC? What changed compared to when you compare Xcel's original plans, modifications of their clean heat proposals, and the final ruling from the PUC? So
Real quick, Lauren, before we get too deep in here, we did have a question about whether this is going to be recorded and sent out. Are we recording live?
Yes, we're recording.
Okay, lovely. And then it sounds like everything can be probably sent on afterwards.
Oh, yes, we'll definitely be following up not only with the recording, but as many resources as we can share. And we encourage everyone listening to be in touch and share your questions, share opportunities, for other events where this information can be disseminated to the public and decision makers and other interested parties. So how did we influence them? Well, these were the proposals that Xcel put forward. And it might look a little complicated, but if you look at the list on the left, electrification was a major part of what Xcel proposed. Advanced side management, that's largely efficiency. But they also wanted to use recovered methane and hydrogen, which largely means hydrogen blending, as part of their emission reduction portfolio. In other words, claiming that they would help, that using these strategies would help them meet the emission reduction goals. And we were questioning that. So ultimately, we did get hydrogen out of the plan. We did get recovered methane largely out of the plan. Early on, certified natural gas and carbon offsets were removed from the plan because of the resistance of health and climate advocates. And that includes some of our state agencies and our local governments, as well as all the nonprofits and other advocates that are involved in the proceeding. So we did pretty well. And the arguments we made were hydrogen blending has a lot of problems. PSR is very concerned about the health and safety problems related to using those blends in the homes because hydrogen can increase NOx emissions that cause asthma and increase asthma attacks. Hydrogen leaks, ignites, and explodes even more easily than methane itself. Hydrogen's expensive and it's usually sourced from methane itself. And that means more energy than producing the methane itself. It actually needs an additional industrial process to produce the hydrogen, whether it's green or sourced from methane. There's additional energy inputs that are required, and that makes it highly inefficient as a fuel to heat homes. And investing in hydrogen blends perpetuates dependence on the harmful methane because it's just a blend. It really cannot be used at absolute most 20% ratio, and that is pushing it because of all the safety problems, including that the pipelines themselves largely cannot endure a high level of hydrogen without embrittling and becoming less functional than they are. And even at best, they can leak, and hydrogen is one of the most leaky fuel that's on the market. So recovered and certified methane gas problems. These are other strategies that Xcel wanted to use, but they're methane, and burning methane gas is bad for health and safety. So regardless of the source, there's leaking and burning gas that releases carbon monoxide, NOx, particulate matter, and other toxic air pollutants that cause asthma, increase asthma attacks, aggravate other lung conditions, and other health conditions that shorten and degrade human life. So why would you go there? Nothing is improved by sourcing the methane gas from programs that claim it's cleaner, or from other sources such as landfill or coal bed methane. And those are very unstable sources that are costly, that cannot be well documented, and we made that case. And also leaking gas can cause fires and explosion and risk monoxide poisoning, and those are serious risks because not everything's always maintained the way it should be, whether it's a pipeline or whether it's the ventilation in your home, especially for renters. Barbara, did you have a question? Thank you. So, of course, there are, multiple causes. We have a climate and health crisis because we're dependent on fossil fuels, and that's the whole point of this program for the Clean Heat Plan, is to reduce the emissions from fossil fuels that both put our climate and our health in jeopardy. And maybe this is more detailed than a lot of people need right now, because most of us are familiar with these issues. But yes, the air pollution from the use of fossil fuels, whether it's inside your home or outside your home, damages health. And those health conditions are worse for communities that are poor, worse for minority communities that are exposed through environmental racism to multiple air pollution sources, including highways, factories, and refineries. They can least afford the medication, treatment, hospital bills resulting from asthma attacks and other health conditions that are aggravated by the air pollution. And they can least afford to miss days of school and work. So there's a lot of reasons why it's an environmental justice issue. And of course, we're all vulnerable to many disasters resulting from the climate crisis caused by largely by the use of fossil fuels, and that includes fire, smoke, drought, heat waves, floods. If we can escape from that, we should. And so that's why we're doing what we're doing. Again, promoting equity. So we need equitable access to the benefits of the Clean Heat Plan, and that was one of the cases that we made. And the good news is now, especially because of the results of the Clean Heat Plan, we have robust rebates for emission-free heat pumps available now. And those heat pumps don't even just heat, but they also cool. They provide cooling in homes. They replace traditional air conditioners, and there are many homes that do not have cooling now that would have cooling once they have access to heat pumps. So it solves two problems, multiple problems in one. It's a win-win-win across the board in so many ways. And just pointing out that, if we get off gas completely, we will replace our gas stoves, which are even more polluting than our gas furnaces, with induction stoves. There's heat pump water heaters that are included in the Clean Heat Plan. And we can just avoid so many risks and so many problems when we all convert to emission-free. Just trying to drive that term home because it's a really great take-home term that a lot of people will understand compared to the terms building electrification, building decarbonization. All those terms have their place, but there's nothing like being emission-free. So you can learn more and share PSR's new hydrogen blending and clean heat plan web resource bank. And I'm going to walk you through that here real quick. So this is our brand new webpage, how Colorado beat Xcel Energy's hydrogen blending scheme. And this is a list of some of the reasons, the problems with hydrogen blending, and a lot of links, a lot of resources to find more details about this. I really have to highlight the pipeline safety audit because Colorado's pipeline regulator has largely failed to address the serious safety risks that come from the huge gas networks that we have, the huge and growing gas networks that we have in Colorado. And so I really urge people to read this report. It's really important, but there's all kinds of resources here you can check out. We have an older webinar. Maybe I'll post this webinar, but right now we have an older webinar that goes into detail about the problems with hydrogen blending. This is another way to learn what Xcel's plan was and how we fought it. And we ran an ad campaign. We were fortunate enough to have funding to run an ad campaign, digital and print, in the Denver Post, in Prairie Media, which is Boulder and Larimer County, the Sentinel, which starts Lee Aurora, but it's a statewide news outlet. So we call it the Expensive, Explosive, and Polluting campaign against Xcel's dangerous hydrogen agenda. So we started that as soon as we heard about what Xcel was up to. And I guess I need to get back into the fact that Xcel proposed a demonstration project. That was the original plan. And even before the Clean Heat Plan, they proposed a demonstration project in rural Hudson, Colorado, about 35 miles northeast of Denver. And the community was largely unaware of it. So gratefully, we had some excellent reporting from Colorado Public Radio on this issue, and they revealed that most of the residents weren't aware, weren't prepared, had never been asked for their consent, And I have to bring up that this issue of consent is a major one when you look at the ethics of hydrogen blending. When we did discovery in the clean heat plan, Xcel repeated that there is no need for the consent of residents before they introduce hydrogen into their gas supply. They reasserted that multiple times. We asked for the legal foundation. It was not that was not forthcoming, but they strongly believe that they do not have to have the consent of residents before they introduce hydrogen. So it's really a great thing that the PUC found it not to be in our interest to have residential hydrogen blending demonstration projects be part of the clean heat plan and hopefully not part of our utilities practices at all. What is the clean heat standard? I've gone over it a little bit, but there's more here. And then I just wanted to show you that there's a timeline of events where the industry started promoting hydrogen blending and got the support from the U.S. Department of Energy. This is where Colorado passed the clean heat plan. Hydrogen Energy's gas utility unveils its plan in 2023 to demonstrate hydrogen blending. That's our news media ad campaign. They submitted their plan to the clean heat proceeding. And then they did drop, even before the end of the proceeding, they dropped the neighborhood demonstration project because of all the pressure. So good job, everybody who pitched in, pushing back on that concept. Then the PUC decision released last year promotes heat pumps, rejects hydrogen blending and other false solutions. And now January 1 of this year, we have a whole bunch of great new rebates for Xcel customers. And we're going to have Justin Brant of SWEEP tell us about those rebates. So please introduce yourself, Justin, and take it away.
Real,
Great. We'll start. You have some questions?
I just wanted to say, do we want to do a couple of the questions that came up over your presentation, Lauren, now, or do we want to hold till the very end?
Let's see. Let me see if I can answer a couple and then we'll do the rest later. But I did promise Justin we'd get going pretty promptly here. So
Okay.
yes.
My apologies, Justin.
That's okay. Okay.
All right. So real quick, we had a gentleman, Frank Ruby, who just wanted to mention that he is a member of Go Electric Colorado, and they offer free coaching services to anyone who needs help navigating their home or apartment electrification. And he's also a member of CCL's Building Electrification and Efficiency Initiative that offers presentations to community groups about benefits, what, why, and how around efficiency and electrification. So thank you, Frank. And if you want any other information to go out to the group, we can do that at the end. And then we had a question around if there's a reduction in goals and costs, if those are cheaper, why do the utilities get to collect up to 2.5% more in charges?
Because the utilities, because they have arrangements as a in their monopoly service of customers and taking on responsibility, they have a built-in level of profit that they are entitled to for taking on that responsibility, like it or not. That's the arrangement. We certainly could go for some other programs. I'm disturbed to see that some people had a hard time seeing the slides. And I don't know why that was the case. Did you have a trouble seeing the website or the slides, Claire?
Nope, everything was perfectly presentable on our side.
Okay, thank you. All right, so let's let Justin go ahead because I know he has some other engagements that he needs to get to. Thank you for being here, Justin.
Yeah, thanks a lot. I can share my screen. Great. I guess just first to hit on one of the questions that Lauren just answered, why Xcel's collecting money if these are lower cost reductions. The emission reductions are not free. There's a cost associated with them. Electrification and energy efficiency are lower cost than other solutions like renewable natural gas or hydrogen. So they're the lowest cost options to reduce emissions, but there's still a cost associated with them, and that's the cost. And those are the costs that Xcel is collecting from customers, and has to do with the cost gap. So, um, so I guess just to start, my name is Justin Brant. I'm the Utility Program Director at SWEEP, the Southwest Energy Efficiency Project. SWEEP is a nonprofit based in Boulder, that promotes energy efficiency and electrification, in 6 states in the Southwest, including Colorado. As utility program director, I lead our regulatory work at public utility commissions around the region, including in Colorado, as well as legislative work, and collaboration with utilities in the utility sector. So I don't need to belabor this point because Lauren hit it pretty well. The Clean Heat Plan from Xcel was filed as a result of a legislation we passed in 2021 that set decarbonization targets for the investor-owned gas utilities in Colorado and allowed them to meet those targets through a sort of suite of different what we call clean heat resources that include energy efficiency, electrification, as well as leak reduction, green hydrogen, and recovered methane. So to put it in context, Colorado, this piece of legislation and this work is really nation leading. So there are clean heat standards in 4 states now, though Colorado was the first, and we are the farthest along in terms of implementation. So as far as I am aware, this clean heat plan from Xcel is the first sort of natural gas utility decarbonization plan that was approved in the United States. And since Xcel filed their plan, clean heat plans have now been approved in Colorado for the 2 other major investor-owned gas utilities, Black Hills, Colorado Gas, and MS Energy. The Black Hills Clean Heat Plan was just approved by the commission yesterday. And in I think another first in the nation, the commission required Black Hills to invest in electrification, sort of against their desires. Again, not aware of any other gas utilities that are will be promoting electrification, not voluntarily. There are a few that have voluntary programs, but that's a recent win based on some advocacy of SWEEP and some partners. So what is the Xcel? Sorry, no, I don't know where. Missing a slide, so apologies there. So the commission in Colorado approved about $400 million for electrification and energy efficiency for calendar years 24 for 4 years, so 2024 through 2027. That was on top of about I think it's 100 or 200 million that had already been approved. So I think the total energy efficiency and electrification budget for Xcel Energy for the next 3 years is close to 600 million. It's a lot of money. And as Lauren said, starting January 1st, we're seeing sort of what that means. So Xcel's rebates are now in the field for energy efficiency and electrification. And what that means, and what we saw from this infusion of dollars from the Clean Heat Plan, is that Xcel, essentially tripled their rebates that were already existing. The existing rebates we thought were pretty generous, and now they're probably some of the highest in the country. So for a cold climate heat pump, that means over $2,200 per ton. The average resident in Colorado would probably need a 3 to 4 ton system. So we're talking about $6,000 to $8,000 per unit. For a less efficient, non-cold climate certified heat pump, it's $900 a ton, and for a heat pump water heater, $2,250. I don't need to go through all of these. There's also great rebates for all electric new construction, about $30,000 per home. For a highly efficient home, there's different tiers of rebates. So this is just one of them. And robust incentives for income qualified customers. So for an income qualified cold climate heat pump, I believe it would be 100% of the project cost up to $45,000 per home. Uh, and that's a significant increase over where we had been. For income qualified, and we also have similar incentives for insulation and air sealing and other types of equipment. So this is a subset. There was an increase in all gas energy efficiency and electrification incentives for Xcel. These rebates are available to all Xcel customers, whether they get gas, electric and gas, or electric service from Xcel. So very hopeful that these rebates will really start to move the market around electrification, but also energy efficiency within Xcel's service territory. So I thought I'd show an example of what this means. This is actually a quote I got for my house recently from a contractor. I live in Boulder, so you can see the Xcel rebate. It's a 3-ton unit. It's actually calculated based on the tonnage of heating capacity of 5 degrees F, which is hard for most people to understand. And really, depending on the heat pump model, it can have more or less sort of degradation in its ability to heat at 5 degrees. So they quoted, I don't know exactly what the tonnage at 5, but it's about 3. So $6,200 from Xcel. The state of Colorado heat pump tax credit is $500, and then there's a bunch of city and county of Boulder rebates available. So for my house, there's $8,000 in state and utility rebates available, and then there's an additional $2,000 federal tax credit. Though the future of that tax credit is certainly uncertain, but again, for my home, it brings the cost down to $6,000. Which is pretty good. And while we're excited about the Xcel rebates, there's also a lot more coming in Colorado. So the state this year will be rolling. Well, they've already started implementing the federal home energy rebates, but they should be available broadly sometime this year. So that's $140 million for electrification and energy efficiency for low and moderate income customers. As it relates to heat pumps, that can be up to $8,000 per customer for a heat pump, on top of the utility rebates, and up to $1,740 for a heat pump water heater. We don't know exactly what the state design is going to be like in terms of if the full $8,000 will be available to all low and moderate income customers, or if they'll graduate it based on your income. But those incentives should be in the field sometime this year. My understanding is that money was already out the door, essentially from DOE and in the state's pockets. So it should not be impacted by the administration change, but again, a lot of questions about some of the federal dollars these days. And then in addition, DRCOG, the Denver Regional Council of Governments, received a Climate Pollution Reduction Act, Climate Pollution Reduction Grant from the EPA focused on energy efficiency and electrification. So there's an additional $200 million for a number of both low income, but also market rate incentives for energy efficiency and electrification, and a lot of work on workforce development and coaching. But I think all told, it's about $1 billion when you combine Xcel's monies with the federal program and the DRCOG program that we expect to be rolling out in the next year or so. There's a few resources I just wanted to share if you're interested in, understanding moving forward with electrification. Understanding Level Electric is a website that the Beneficial Electrification League of Colorado puts together. It's a good resource where you can put your utility in, and it'll give you all the rebates that are available for you. Wiring America has a similar calculator. Um, and then if you do want to access Xcel's rebates, you need to use a contractor that's certified by the company. Most HVAC contractors are, but included Xcel's link to ensure that a contractor is certified as a closed program. So you do need to use one of their approved contractors. I believe Boulder and Boulder County also require the use of one of Xcel's contractors, and as well as the city of Denver, which has its own rebate program. So I think that's it, and happy to answer any questions folks might have.
I'll read some questions off, or do you want to do it, Claire? I could read some questions off of the Q&A for you, Justin. So I'm going to start with the most recent question. Does the Colorado Office of Energy has they developed a list of approved installers and equipment?
Not yet. They haven't rolled their program out to the mass market. So they do have to develop a contractor list. That's one of the requirements of the home energy rebate programs. And as they roll that out, we expect to see it. And my understanding is they're working very closely with Xcel. So our hope, and we've been advocating for, is that the Xcel list of contractors will be one and the same with the state of Colorado. I guess the state of Colorado, for the tax credit, there is a separate list of approved contractors, which is much smaller. So for contractors that offer the state of Colorado heat pump and heat pump water heater tax credits directly to customers. So they do have that approved list, which you can find on the Energy Office's website. But again, just to make sure folks are getting all the available rebates, I think it's good to start with that list. And if a company is on that list, they're probably on the Xcel approved list, I would assume.
Thank you, Justin. Another question from John Wickham. What type of heat pumps qualify for rebates? I know that those are air source heat pumps in general for a cold climate or a standard heat pump, but are geo exchange heat pumps included,
Yes.
and kind of geothermal or
$700 a ton.
Yep. So Xcel, I think I included. Xcel has rebates for ground source heat pumps. I believe it's $3,300 per ton now with the new clean heat plan rebates per heating ton. And then there's two tiers of rebates for air source heat pumps, cold climate certified, and then sort of standard heat pump. That's a Hopefully that answers the question.
Frank Ruby shares that this is only for Xcel, and but you did mention that Black Hills, and at least the Black Hills program has been approved. So if you're with Black Hills as your source of gas, and this is focused on gas utilities, but do you want to elaborate on whether it's just, sure, it's Xcel customers are getting this, but what about everyone else? What can they do?
Yeah, so the Xcel rebates are available to Xcel customers. Like I said, even though a lot of these are focused on the clean heat plan, the commission was pretty adamant that they'd be available to all Xcel customers. So if you're in Longmont, for example, and you have a municipal electric utility and you're Xcel gas customers,
I think you froze, Justin. I'm sorry. Maybe it's just me. Is anyone hearing or seeing Justin speak?
Oh, there we go. He's unfroze.
Okay.
Excellent.
You
can you
froze.
hear me again?
I do hear you now. Yes, thank you.
Sorry about that. So the Xcel rebates are available to all Xcel customers, like I said, whether they're gas, electric only, or dual fuel.
Okay.
the state of Colorado's incentives will be available to all low and moderate income customers throughout the state. The definition of low and moderate income is tied to your what's called your area median income, so it will vary dramatically depending on where you live. And then a number of other electric utilities. So tri-state, if you're in the service territory of a utility in that gets their wholesale supply from tri-state, they have very generous electrification incentives. Same with Pot River Power Authority, and then a number of other municipal and cooperative utilities. Electric utilities do offer electrification and energy efficiency, though not all of them.
Okay. Are there any other natural gas providers other than the four investor-owned, which is Xcel, Black Hills, Atmos, and Colorado Natural Gas?
There's a number of municipal
Okay.
gas suppliers.
Mm.
Colorado Springs is the only major one, but a lot of other small communities are served by municipal gas utilities. I do not expect any of them to offer electrification incentives.
And a couple of people are asking you to weigh in if you think the federal credits will remain through the year. I assume it's probably pretty hard to say, but do you have a crystal ball, Justin?
Um, I don't have a crystal ball. There's a lot of I'm hearing a lot of hearing a lot. It's hard to tell what's real and what's not. I like I said, my understanding for the home energy rebates is that a lot of that money is already sort of committed and it would be pretty hard to claw back.
Okay.
Um, but I don't know for sure. I think the tax credits for building electrification are very much in trouble. And,
Mm.
I don't know. It seems hard to sort of retroactively, if someone has already installed something and is expecting the tax credit, to not give it to them. But, I know there was news today the Republicans are trying to find, ways to fund their tax cuts.
Yeah.
So I assume all tax credits are very much in the crosshairs, but who knows?
That's a great thing about all the good work that we have done in Colorado. And, I really am very thankful to our legislators, to our administration, to our agencies, that were able to make this possible and actually did listen to a lot of the arguments that we made, and didn't just listen to Excel's arguments. I think that was really great. And even Excel, did bend somewhat, and go with some of the program, was willing to make adjustments. So it was a pretty good conversation here. Somebody asked, what's an IQ cold climate heat pump? And that means income qualified. So those numbers mean income qualified. And Justin, this might have to be the last question because I do want to get to the conversation I'm going to have with Vince Calvano. But do you want to talk about a little bit about the income qualified programs and anything related to disproportionately impacted communities, even the market transformation projects that might have some impact on for renters, et cetera? Do you want to talk about those kinds of programs?
Sure. So I guess Xcel through Energy Outreach Colorado, which I saw somebody put in the chat, has offered income qualified focused energy efficiency and electrification incentives for a long time. They've gotten much more generous, like all incentives as part of this program. Yeah, I will say Xcel and Energy Outreach Colorado have been working to identify. So those incentives are available to customers who make less than 80% of the area median income. Those are strict federal requirements around income, and really need to be income needs to be verified. It's a pretty rigorous process, and those programs are generally oversubscribed. So hopefully with this extra funding, we can serve more households. I will say that Xcel and Energy Outreach Colorado have also been working on what's called sort of geographic eligibility for maybe not a full 100% incentives, but similarly high. So using the state's definition of a disproportionately impacted community, customers, all customers within identified DI communities will be eligible for higher incentives than than just market rate customers. So again, depending on where somebody lives, if it meets the state criteria in the DI community, there will be additional incentives available without having to sort of meet strict income requirements. This one is still just getting underway, so we've sort of been working with Xcel to try to figure out the details of how it'll look. And those things are just starting to get into the field, but really excited about this sort of new opportunity moving forward that should, really be looking beyond just sort of the specific income qualifications to sort of other historical harms and criteria that the state has deemed important.
Well, thank you very much. Is there anything that you'd like to end with? Anything else that you'd like our audience to know before we move on and talk with Attorney Vince Calvano of CRES?
No, nothing I can think of. I think I had my contact information up there for a while. So if you have any other questions, don't hesitate to reach out.
Thank you very much. We will be following up with everyone and sharing the recording, sharing a lot of resources, and we'll do our best to answer all the questions that you've shared. I see a lot of them are comments, and we appreciate your comments as well. And perhaps we'll be able to have a deeper discussion after our second guest and I have a conversation about the value of utility proceedings for climate advocacy. So thank you for being here, Justin, and thank you for joining us, Vince Calvano, attorney for Colorado Renewable Energy Society, also known as CRES. Would you like to introduce yourself, talk a little bit about your background and some of the work you've done with CRES on utility proceedings?
Sure. Thanks, Lauren, and thanks to Justin for that presentation. My name is Vince Calvano, and I'm an attorney. I've worked with a number of different groups, all regulatory before the Public Utilities Commission here in Colorado. One of those groups is the Colorado Renewable Energy Society, which I obviously represented them, and PSR Colorado and the Clean Heat Plan. But I've represented the COSA, or it used to be called COSIA, the Solar Trade Organization, in years past, in regulatory proceedings. And I was also counsel to Pueblo County as well. But yeah, most of my work has been in that area.
Thank you very much. And what would you like the audience to know first and foremost about the value of utility proceedings, getting involved in utility proceedings? There's a couple different ways to do it, first of all. You can submit comments, but there is a higher level of involvement called intervening. What's the value for advocacy groups to intervene and really get deeply involved in utility proceedings? And what does that process look like?
Yeah, I'm happy to explain that. I mean, obviously, the main value, as you and Justin may know, is that you provide a different perspective to the commissioners who are hearing this proceeding. Because the way it starts is that the utility has an application, they provide their expert witnesses, their testimony, and put that forward saying this is what we want to do. And so the commission would just do whatever the utility says if no one else intervenes. And so the whole idea is you bring in interested parties such as SWEEP or CRES or PSR Colorado that bring a varying amount of interest and expertise to the proceedings. So you get a better kind of whole picture of how, the clean heat plan or some other, utility program may work. And so, it brings balance to the regulatory process by having these uh, other interveners that have maybe more environmental interest or, whatever the case is. Utility consumer advocates for the utility consumer. And so, as I started to mention, kind of the brief overview of the process here in the regulatory process before the Public Utilities Commission is the utility is has to provide an application in the clean heat plan, it went, there was a bill that was passed. There were, uh, regulations that were based off of that, a rulemaking proceeding uh, was done at the Utility Commission, and that's a little bit different. I won't really touch on that as much, but that led to the need for the utility, in this case, the one I'll mention most is Public Service Company of Colorado filed an application to get approval of their clean heat plan. And so that again comes with a large amount of testimony from employees of Xcel who are trying to prove why their plan makes sense. And then you have interveners, parties that are interested in intervening. Some have a right to intervene, like the utility consumer advocate. They just basically mention, hey, we're involved, because that's their statutory reason for being, is to be involved in these proceedings. And then you have permissive interveners like SWEEP or CRES or PSR Colorado that have to get permission from the commission. And so once you get that permission, then you're allowed to really dig into that application and that testimony from uh, the utility, and you can ask discovery questions. You can really ask kind of whatever you want about anything they've provided in their application and testimony. So you really can get down to that nitty-gritty level of detail, and that's where it's helpful to have these experts like Justin or yourself that really go through all the detail and can provide a response. And that response comes as answer testimony. And so all interveners have the opportunity to, answer what the direct testimony of the company was. And after that, there's a few weeks that the company will ask questions, to the, whoever provided written answer testimony can be questioned, and they can have discovery requests propose, that they have to answer. And then there's cross-answer testimony where all the interveners can, ask questions of whatever answer testimony is out there. But then also the utility gets to respond, and that's called rebuttal. And they have a chance to rebut anything that they saw through answer testimony. Sometimes it's positive, saying, hey, we like what these interveners have said. Sometimes it's antagonistic. No, we don't like what they said. We want to keep, our original plans. And then that can either go to, settlement negotiations or a hearing, and there's an evidentiary hearing where the different parties have the opportunity to ask cross-examine questions of whatever witness they want, whether it's a public service witness. It has to be, it can't be friendly cross. Like you have to actually have an adverse relationship to that witness in the evidentiary hearing. But to kind of sum it up, after that hearing process, then you have a final kind of statement of position. So you take all that evidence that was introduced through all these different levels of testimony, and you write kind of a final legal brief, so that, trying to persuade the commissioners or an administrative law judge, if they're presiding over it, what they should do with this plan. And then you have a decision from the commissioners, and sometimes there are appeals, but basically that decision, is weighing all the different input that they got from all the different interveners. And, obviously the company has the biggest swath of information that comes in, but it's very important that all these interveners are there to provide a different and separate context to the proceeding so that we can get a better balanced decision.
Thank you. Um, can you talk about the role of expert witnesses and how they're recruited and how to work with them and, how to brief them and why you need them?
Sure. I mean, it's probably different for different organizations, but in general, there can be kind of in-house experts. Say if in CRES, for example, we have a policy committee, and I'm a member of the policy committee, and we have certain experts on that committee that we reach out to. We also had Dr. Chuck Kutcher is on. I see him as an attendee. He was very integral in also not alone, not just being an expert witness, but also recruiting a number of experts in the clean heat plan process. So uh, CRES was indebted to him and his ability to kind of get different experts on different aspects of that clean heat process. So it's different for every proceeding. A rate case, you want, rate experts, electric, utility planning, resource planning. You get maybe someone that's more versed in resource planning, but so it really depends on the type of proceeding and the type of organization you are, and whether or not you have internal people that can handle that testimony to be able to dig into what the utility has said and be able to, come up with a really good, cogent answer testimony. Otherwise, you can reach out to outside groups and people that are experts in that field and hire them or retain them to be your expert.
Thank you. The answer testimony, I'm going to give my take on what that means. Basically, it is your testimony about providing evidence to the PUC about and making your case for what you want to see the results be, whether you're criticizing or advocating for certain outcomes. But the answer part of it is just that it's supposed to be as if it was a live situation and somebody was asking you questions, but it's all on paper and you ask yourself questions. Have I described that accurately, Vince? And do you want to say
Yeah,
why we
it uses the format of question and answer, testimony, but it is written, so it's a little bit awkward, I guess, from that perspective, in the sense that it's all written down. It's kind of mimicking as if the attorney was there asking the witness questions, kind of like a deposition or something like that. But since it's pre-written, it's just kind of that's the way it's done.
what do you, you've been involved in several different processes, and some of them have been, for example, the electric resource planning process, which seems to have multiple stages. So, um, how different are these proceedings and how are they the same? And what do you think people should know about the spectrum of utility proceedings?
Yeah, there are a number of them, and one of the interesting things, I guess, about the Clean Heat Plan is that it was an inaugural, proceeding before the Public Utilities Commission, because there hadn't been a Clean Heat Plan before. But other plans, like electric resource plans, are cyclical, and they've been happening for decades now. And every 4 years, give or take, the electric utilities, there's only two investor-owned utilities here in Colorado that are regulated fully by the Public Utilities Commission, and one of them is Xcel, or Public Service Company of Colorado, and the other is Black Hills, Colorado Electric. So those are the two that have to do all this extra stuff. But yeah, I mean, each one's a little bit different. They all have there are rules and regulations that are, you know, kind of you can go to the PUC website and download those and see, like, the utility has to file all those rules and regulations. So there's a lot of that that goes in, to what the utility has to provide, and what they have to deal with. And um, yeah, I don't know. I mean, there's demand side management proceedings, there's electric resource planning, there's any host of, there's different rate cases for electric
Yeah.
and gas, and
I wanted you
you
to
know,
tell us a little bit about the rate cases. And do you need an attorney to intervene? And if you are concerned about proposed rate increases or other, costs that are going to be imposed on consumers or anything really, and you don't have attorney, so do you need an attorney? And if you don't have attorney, what can you do to make
it's a
sure your
little
voice?
bit, yeah, the needing an attorney, it's definitely easiest to be represented by an attorney. And so in order to be involved in these adjudicatory proceedings, all these applications before the Public Utilities Commission, you have to file a motion to intervene. You don't technically need an attorney, but there have been instances where individuals have tried to intervene on their own and have been denied, intervener status. So it is more difficult without an attorney. In the past, I think individuals were more readily accepted as interveners, but it's not as much the case now. And so, it's more of a legal question. Yeah, the way the law is written, you would think that individuals should be allowed, but it all depends, and it kind of depends on the way, the regulatory process is going and what the commission says. And the commission says you can't intervene, then that's the way it is. And so, yeah, you typically do need an attorney, and rate cases are big, long proceedings, especially the electric utility rate cases, or even the gas rate cases. So yeah, there's a lot of information that goes in there. So it's helpful to have an attorney to help you navigate through the process.
And if you can't be an intervener, you can always comment, right? Do you want to talk about the public comment process?
Sure. Yeah. I mean, there are a couple ways. There's always a public comment feature through the PUC website that you can go to, and especially helpful if you know the proceeding number, and so you can comment under that proceeding number, and you can file it at any time. And then there usually is a public comment hearing for larger proceedings, and that you kind of have to be on the lookout for. That proceeding, they usually announce, like, if you go to the PUC website, there is a schedule. And so you can look on their calendar and the schedule there. And, again, if you know the proceeding number, it's helpful, but they usually have an explanation of what it is. And at that, it used to be in person, but now they're typically virtual, and it's kind of like a Zoom. You sign up and you can give public comment. Now, if you are an intervener involved in the intervention, you're not supposed to be giving public comment because your process of providing input is through your intervention process. So you wouldn't give a public comment, say if CRES was involved. You wouldn't want your members making public comment. They could feel free to comment as an individual, but just not on behalf of CRES. But that's one kind of small caveat there.
Well, thank you. Do you think, would you be comfortable with, well, I'll follow up with everybody to share all the contact info that is available to share with our audience. And I'm just going to take a quick look at questions, see if there's anything. But while I'm doing that, Vince, to make sure we don't leave any questions behind, could you talk about the just transition solicitation, electric resource plan? First, and I do want to say, so that everybody knows, Vince Calvano was our attorney for PSR Colorado and for Colorado Renewable Energy Society in the Clean Heat Plan, and we wouldn't have been able to do it without you, Vince. So I just want to give you huge credit for making it all possible for us to work with CRES and have our voice in as interveners in that proceeding. So big thanks to you. And would you like to share something about the next proceeding that we're working together on, which is called the Just Transition Solicitation?
Yeah, sure. Thanks for that, and I'm happy to help. And obviously, you guys being the witnesses and the groups do the majority of the work, and I just help get it before the PUC. So I'm happy to do my part. But yeah, the just transition proceeding is kind of an sort of a holdover or an interim electric resource plan. It's not part of that kind of 4-year cyclical, through the rules kind of a resource plan, but it came out after the last resource plan that Public Service, held, and so it's basically the same thing, but just an interim plan. And one of the main features of it is transitioning from coal electric generation that was happening, especially in the Pueblo area. And so there's a number of plants, the Comanche plants down there, and they're kind of retiring. There's 3 units, and they're all retiring here between now and the end of I think it's 2030. And so after that, the utility needs to figure out what it's going to do to replace that power. And so that's what this just transition plan is all about. And, there's a resource acquisition period. There's a couple of phases in most every large electric resource planning proceeding. And phase one is where you do kind of the modeling and figure out what inputs you're going to have and how you're going to look at the bids that come in for the need for resources. And so then the second half of the resource planning is, dealing with all the bids and figuring out which portfolio, which kind of suite of resources you're going to utilize to meet your resource needs.
Thank you. Yes. So yeah, it became a much huger thing than we expected because it was pretty big already what was happening with the coal plant being retired and being need to replaced. But at the same time, there's all this new demand load or load demand that is being expected and being rolled into this proceeding so that there's a lot more need for a larger energy source than what exists currently right now. Do you agree?
Yeah, I mean, there is definitely an increased need for resources, more kind of load growth than was expected over the previous, past decade. And I also wanted to add that it's not just the Pueblo area that's a part of the just transition solicitation. There's also, power plant in Craig and in Pawnee that are transitioning as well. So there's a couple other parts of the transition plan as well. So, but
That's right. Yeah, yeah. So it actually gets out to Craig and also to the Eastern Plains. There are actually 3 coal plants being retired in this proceeding, correct?
I believe so. Yeah.
Yeah, that's a lot. That's a lot. So I will say that there will be opportunities to get involved, and we'll do our best to make sure that everybody's apprised of what's going on with the just transition solicitation. And so I'm going to let you, I know you have a busy night, a busy life outside of this, Vince, as well. And so I'll let you get back to it. And thanks very, very much for joining us. Looking at the questions here specifically for Vince. And let me see if there's anything, last question here. What can we expect for coal replacement? Well, there's a range of things, and Lynn, so obviously, typical, Xcel wants to rely more on gas than we want them to. There will be a robust renewable energy component, and we'll be debating how much and what form that takes. This is a somewhat preliminary scope because transmission RE. Transmission is a different, that's part. Vince, do you want to say anything about the role of transmission, or Chuck, do you want to weigh in on that? I'll get back.
Yeah, I mean, there is some transmission aspect to the resource planning as well. Sometimes there are, separate transmission planning proceedings, but there are certain specific transmission lines that need to be in place in order for some resources to come online. So that is part of the electric resource planning process.
Yeah, and the most controversial thing, although it's not really directly part of this proceeding, is whether there will be a nuclear component. There's not going to be a nuclear component right away, but Xcel wants funding to explore all of its options, and so that funding will come from ratepayers. So they kind of want arguably an R&D or an exploratory fund to be available. So that's something that we'll be debating in the clean heat plan. I mean, in the just transition. There's a lot of factors, and we'll do our best to keep you apprised. So thank you very much, Vince. Let me see if there's any other. I think that covers it. If there's anybody who has a last minute question, please type it into the Q&A and I'll ask Vince. It's hard to see them all by myself, unfortunately. So one more, okay, last call. Okay, thanks for being here, Vince. And now I'm going to share some more details from our new website that I think you'll find pretty exciting. And feel free to hang on if you want to see them as well, too, Vince. Thank you. Okay, so if it's 5:10 and if you need to move on with your night and you're not interested in our additional resources, I'll certainly look forward to seeing you next time, and we'll follow up with as many resources and the recording as we can, and including contacts, etc. But right now, I'm going to go back to sharing our new webpage. And I need to close this. Okay, so is there anyone having any trouble seeing this page right now? Because some people were saying they weren't seeing a timeline before. So is there anyone who cannot?
It looks good to me.
Okay, great. Okay, so like I was sharing before, this timeline of events is useful to get a grip on what happened with hydrogen blending and the clean heat plan. And below it, what I haven't gotten to yet before is the resource bank or the resource hub, however you want to describe it. So there's a lot of articles listed here with a lot of links, and that's not uncommon to have that, but these are all some very, very good resources. In particular, if you want to know more about hydrogen blending, the hydrogen pipe dreams, PSR National Report is a must read, and you can go to page 5 for a summary of the top of the 6 failings, the 6 high-level failings of hydrogen blending, why it doesn't do what it's supposed to do, and why it's a hazardous solution that has a lot of trouble for consumers, for disproportionately impacted communities in its production, in its transport. And like I said before, you really should read the state auditor's report, and I just cannot resist reading this right now. Page 62 of the state auditor's report of the Colorado Gas Pipeline Safety Commission's reports on the failure to properly regulate pipelines. And that means, hydrogen has to be in pipelines, gas has to be in pipelines. Page 62 exposes Xcel's 1,200 plus safety violations between 2018 and 2021, and the agency's failure to respond. In April 2018, the operator was responsible for an explosion that occurred when it was performing standard maintenance on a pipeline and found a gas leak, and the maintenance ruptured the pipeline. The explosion resulted in $151,000 in property damage, and surrounding homes were evacuated. Since that 2018 explosion, the program has documented that Xcel Energy has had a total of 1,247 instances of noncompliance throughout the state, and no penalties have been collected from Xcel Energy for the noncompliance during that time as of March 2023. That's pretty frustrating right there. But the bigger question is, do we want to have gas going underfoot? Do we want to have gas going into our homes when these pipelines are so poorly regulated? And we certainly don't want hydrogen gas in those pipelines. So moving right along, now that I've drowned my axe a little bit, too much maybe. So here is our new Clean Heat exhibit resources page. And I spent a lot of time on this, and I wanted people to be able to really see how many resources there are for exploration, for sharing with your public officials, for involvement in utility proceedings, not just in Colorado, but nationwide. As Justin said, we had groundbreaking, we broke new ground here in Colorado with this clean heat proceeding. But other states have their own, good programs and their own challenges and their own struggles to get good representation and decisions made about utilities. And so these are just some very excellent resources that we used to support our testimony. And they're all laid out here, and they're named, and you can click on them and you can read them and you can share them and you can disseminate them. But I just wanted to share that this resource is new and it's here. Hope everybody can see it okay. And then these are selected expert testimonies from Colorado Renewable Energy Society, including Dr. Chuck Kutcher, who's on this call, and my wonderful partner in the co-intervention in the clean heat proceeding. His testimony is available here, and I have a quote from him that is supporting building decarbonization, and there's also some good material critiquing Xcel's proposed emission reduction strategies. We have Scott Denning, who talks about the cumulative effects of fossil fuels on our climate. Dr. Robert Howarth of Cornell, we were very, very lucky to have him discussing recovered methane and hydrogen blending. Paul Martin discussing hydrogen blending and in particular its impact on pipelines. Dr. Dakota Rains critiquing the certified natural gas as an emission reduction strategy. And there were many others. And I'll do my best to fill out this page so that everybody can see all the other great experts that CRES had involved with our clean heat plan testimony. So that's about it. I'm going to stop the share and try to answer any remaining questions. So because it's just me right now, feel free to refresh any questions that you might have and come off of mute, or let me know if you have trouble coming off of mute, so that we can wrap up the night with a good conversation. Anybody want to share or ask any questions that we have not sufficiently answered? Okay, we got a raised hand from Frank Ruby. Can you
Hi, I'm in Loveland, Colorado, and I'm a retired lawyer, but I don't have a lot of experience in interventions. And so that was very interesting testimony. I really, his presentation to us was very useful. I was wondering if he has any insight as to arguments that can be raised against Xcel recovering the stranded costs of the Comanche plants and other coal plants from ratepayers. Because quite honestly, I think there's a very strong argument that those costs should be borne by the stockholders, since it was well known by industry for the last 20 years that fossil fuels need to be retired and we need to move to alternatives. And even when that plant was built, they knew or should have known that it had a limited useful life that was not related to its physical life, but rather simply would not be able to be operated for its full physical life, and therefore ought to be borne. That loss of having to close Comanche early ought to be borne not by ratepayers, but by stockholders as an imprudent investment in the first instance. Vince, any response to that?
I mean, and that's you're preaching to the choir here. I mean, I agree with you. I mean, I'm on your camp, but the problem is we have to deal with the regulatory, side of things, and the Public Utilities Commission is a regulatory body that's bound by the regulatory compact that has to balance both the utility's ability to survive and prosper and the public good. And while I get what you were saying, there's the whole other side of the equation where the utility will say, well, that was, you know, uh, approved by the Public Utilities Commission. It was a prudent investment deemed at the time. It may not be actually prudent now, but that's why we need, other interveners if there comes a time to, argue those points before the PUC. We need other people to be involved that can bring, what you're saying, that side of the equation to balance, and hopefully, get the utility to kind of shoulder more of that burden, since I believe it makes sense as well.
So if I could, just one more question. Even today, they're proposing gas plants, which also will have an almost certainly limited life that will not extend for societal purposes into its full physical life. And so it should be noted in the record that even if allowed, that it is an imprudent investment, and that Xcel should be making it at its own risk and not at the risk of ratepayers.
Yeah, that's another good point. Unfortunately, as far as resource planning, and to my knowledge, the best plan would be no new gas, no fossil fuels. But cost-wise, I don't know if we're quite there yet. I mean, this is all things that are happening before the PUC. I'm not the be-all end-all for the solutions to resource planning, but I agree. The fewer fossil fuel resources, the better. However, knowing that renewables can go a long way, we need to build out that renewable percentage of the resource bank. But there probably is still some room, at least in the near term, for gas, and maybe they have enough on the system already. And this is like combustion turbines that can kind of help back, renewable intermittent resources. But obviously we're going to install more storage, but storage prices are coming down. But until that happens, we may be stuck with some certain amount of gas just for price reasons for that. But that doesn't negate what you're saying, and that the gas, especially any new gas, might not fulfill its full life because hopefully we'll have renewable energy in place and other you know emissions-free storage and other uh, planning mechanisms to cut out the emissions, because we know it's something that we need to do. But yeah, it's a tough situation because we want to go gas free, but I'm not sure if we're quite there yet. But we definitely need to be moving that way as quickly as possible, and avoid as many stranded costs as possible.
So, again, Frank Ruby speaking. My experience is limited in another state. And in that state, I believe that the rule was that the utility was to have a fair opportunity to earn a return on its investment, but was not guaranteed a return on its investment. What is the principal rate making theory here in Colorado?
Yeah, I mean that is the same, but kind of, unless you can prove in a rate case that they had their fair opportunity and they shouldn't recover those costs, they are going to recover those costs. So yeah, I mean it's the same legal principle here in Colorado, but the tough part is getting involved in the nitty-gritty of those rate cases and proving that the utility should not recover those costs, because it's a difficult battle.
Got it.
One of the interesting questions about any short-term need for gas is, whether the utility should own it or not, and are there ways of using existing facilities to fill in the any short-term needs that are identified? Another one of the major issues in the just transition is debate over the load, the demand, because they have a very high projection for what that's going to be as a result of data centers, but we don't know how data center policy is going to play out and how responsible the public utility um, is going to be for providing all the data centers with the energy on the same grid that serves the general public. Is there going to be some responsibility put on the companies that are creating this new demand to supply themselves in new ways that don't fit the current model? And will they find ways to do it more efficiently than they've done? So those are some of the debates surrounding, the just transition as well, in addition to, I think siting is a really important question for the renewable energy for any gas that is brought online. And if there is any nuclear, where's that going to go? There's a lot of nuclear dreamers right now, unfortunately, and it's a dark dream from PSR Colorado's perspective. We could have and should and will have more conversations about that, given that there's legislation to support nuclear, but it's not going to be part of this immediate, but it looms large in the background over the just transition, even though it's not necessary, it's highly unlikely to be an immediate question in this proceeding. Anyone else? Okay, well, thank you all very much for joining us again. Please feel free to be in touch. I will go ahead and put my, let's see, how do I share? I'll just be sharing my email and all my contacts and all our resources with you after this call, including the recording. So please feel free to be in touch with us at info@psrcolorado.org. And thank you. Have a good night.